G'day guys, it is the coach here. Welcome. I hope you're all doing well. We are going to be doing a video that has been long overdue. I have no excuses. I have absolutely no excuses for not doing this video immediately, but I'm very excited to actually get this video done. It is talking Gitz, but not just any Gitz. We're not talking trogs. We're not talking gargants. We're not talking spiders. We are talking Squigs. I'm excited. I'm so excited because Squigs for me is what drew me to Gitz. I love them. I was playing with them with the Moon Clan keyword, and here we are. Never did I think we would see more rules given to me with Squigs, but here we are today talking about the White Dwarf issue that came out with Squig rules. I am here with the ETC captain from the Czech, the Czech ETC. The Czech, there's no such thing as the Czech, but it is Adam Slovák, but I've already pronounced that wrong. Hey Adam, How are you? G'day.
I'm good. How are you?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how did I butcher your name?
It was really good. So butchering means 10, so I would say 2 maybe.
Awesome. Well, Adam has been playing with the Gitz for, whoa, my camera's going all crazy. Adam's been playing with the Squigs now for a while, and I want to talk a little bit about how they go about on the tabletop while I fix out my camera. But before I do that, I might just ask you, Adam, how did you get into Gitz and how did you get into Warhammer?
Oh, how did I get into Warhammer? That's quite a long story, but I've been playing for around a year and a half now, I would say. The Age of Sigmar, that is. I've played the original Warhammer Fantasy, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. And I completely forget it exists for the past 10 years. And then I noticed that it evolved into something new. And it caught my eye. I like the rules. I like everything about it. So I just jumped in. And what brought me to the Squigs or Gitz, I wanted to have a underpowered army because I usually am the meta slave. I play the strongest armies. I played Siege. I play whatever. And I wanted to have some, game for army for a friendly game. And Gitz were amazing. The models are beautiful. And straight away, when I picked them, I knew I wanted to make Squigs work. And I bought the list. I knew I wanted to do 3 Manglers list. I made the list and I bought everything. And next week, they announced that there will be extra rules for Squigs. So I sold half of the list and bought the different stuff. But that's how I got into Squigs, yeah.
Yeah, I was drawn to them because of the I guess the models. This is well before the Gloomspite Gitz book. I'm not trying to say I'm some OG type, I didn't join the bandwagon. For me, it was something that was really different, something that was quite unique. I love this idea of the Squig. For me, I remember doing a trivia. I ran a trivia event a couple of years ago, and the final question, the tiebreaker question, was a question about Squigs, and it was, "What is Squig? What does it actually mean?" So, what is a shorthand? What does it actually mean? And very few people got it right, but Squig actually meant squiggly beasts, and to this day, that always kind of stood with me. And I saw the models, and then they obviously got an updated range, the Mangler Squig. They got the sneaky snufflers, they got the Boingroth, they got the new hoppers, even the old hoppers with the little dude pulling his pants down, giving you a moon, like as he's riding the Squig, was just absolutely hilarious. So for me, the Gloomspite Gitz were an opportunity to have fun, but also they can be competitive. Again, in the spirit of context, is this a 5-0 army? Probably not, depending on your meta, but it is an army for me that I've had absolute fun. It can be competitive. You will win some games, and these extra rules for me have really taken it up to another level because it's created consistency.
Exactly.
That probably was the most frustrating thing for me when I've gone to tournaments with Squigs, is that outside of these rules, they are inconsistent and they've been hard to plan for.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. The the White Dwarf rules hit the nail on the head. Exactly what they needed.
It's exactly what they needed. So if you don't have the issue, go out and grab it. I do have the link down, but not the link, but I do have the issue copy in the description, and go buy it because it is good. And we're going to talk a little bit about our list. We're going to talk about how we're thinking about the rules, and then we'll talk a bit about like how we're using them on the table, because both Adam and I are both Squig players. So unlike some of the other talking videos where I don't talk nearly as much, and I let my guests do all the talking, I'm going to talk a little bit more because I have been running this battalion as well. Well, battalions.
Exactly.
Before I get into those rules, Adam, just maybe at a very high level, if somebody has been interested in Squig, someone who is thinking about picking this up for the first time, and they're looking at that Games Workshop shelf, what do Squigs do well? What are their strengths? And why would you consider picking them up other than having probably the best model range in the market?
That was my main point. You just took it out of my mouth. Yeah.
Sorry. All right. Well, you reinforced my point.
Yeah. What do they do good? What do they not do good, really? They, with the rules, they move super fast. They hit hard now. They have some downs, obviously. But if you want fast-moving, fast-paced army where you have to think about every step because a lot of things can go wrong, that's an army for you, I would say.
It's not a complicated army. I think for me with Gitz, what I enjoy about them is they're a glass cannon. So what I mean by that is they can put out a punch. They can punch your opponent in the face. It'll hit them so hard that it makes their ancestors cry, but they can't take a punch. They cannot take a punch. They're not a very defensive army. So you're not going to get many mortal wound saves. You're not going to have a high armor save. But what you do get is you get a lot of wounds. And you do get a lot of punch. There's a lot of rend, a lot of mortal wound output, but not a lot of defense. So I know when I played a Nighthaunt army recently, I just cried because the sheer amount of rend just has no effect on Nighthaunt.
Right.
But then you go up against another army and you just like rip them to shreds. So for me, it's a fun army. It's unpredictable. So you don't know what you're going to get. But again, as I mentioned, the White Dwarf rules have made this more consistent. Well,
the thing is, you don't know what you're going to get, but your opponent doesn't know what he's going to get. So it's also their biggest strength, I would say.
It's always funny. I don't know if it's like this for you, Adam, but you know, when you're setting up your army for deployment and your opponent goes, so tell me about your army. I said, listen, this is what it can do. My Mangler Squig can move 4 inches. My Mangler Squig can also move 18. I don't know what's going to happen on the table. Right. It could do 30 damage. It could do nothing. So you are really playing on the spectrum of amazingness or hot garbage, and you don't know what you're going to get in what round. It can be garbage in round 1. Round 2, it can be freaking amazing. And then garbage, amazing. You just don't know.
Yep. It's a fun element to play around it, you know.
No, it's great. It's awesome. And we've got a cool chat happening as well. They absolutely loving the Squigs. So let's actually get straight into the rules. Let's talk a little bit about how we think about the rules. The way we'll start first is we'll talk a little bit about maybe the initial rules that you already get. So in the White Dwarf, there are additional rules that come for Squigs, but it doesn't mean that you don't sacrifice. It doesn't mean that you sacrifice your allegiance rules. So you still get to use the White Dwarf rules as well as you get to use your Gloomspite Gitz battle tome. So Adam, let's take this through. We've got a whole bunch of rules here. Not everything is relevant for us Squigs. Let's actually just hone in on the rules that are useful to us. So from your perspective, when I open up my battle tome, which are these allegiance rules that are valuable to me?
Right. So let's start with the Bad Moon. There's lots of components to it, but there are just few we are interested in or we can take advantage of with playing pure Squigs. For those who doesn't know how it works, so what is it? At the beginning of the turn or beginning of the battle, let's say, before the first player is determined, you choose one corner of the battlefield and you set up your moon there. And then starting from the second battle round, you roll dice and the moon moves. On a 1, it doesn't move. On a 2 till 5, it moves like 1 position. On a 6, it moves 2 positions. And it goes from one corner to the opposite corner. and the corner itself is the first position. Then it affects the 1/4 of the battlefield. That's the second position. Then it can be on the middle. That's the third position, basically. Then it affects the whole battlefield. Fourth position is the opposite corner of the battlefield and the first one, and then it leaves the battlefield and has no effect whatsoever.
I'll bring up the map to make life easy for you.
Right.
So you can see here that you don't split you split the table up into 4. So you got 4 quadrants, and you can see the moon moves from one side of the board to another, much like a moon would move across, I guess, the night sky. So that rule for us is one that we get to tap into. So we, as a Squig player, this benefits us.
There's multiple ways how it benefits us. The first one is this: basically everyone can take use of this, is the Fangs of the Bad Moon. So if I will read the rule,
if your army is Gloomspite Gitz army, at the start of the hero phase, you can pick one enemy unit and roll a dice. If this roll is equal to or less than the number of models in that unit affected by the light of the bad moon, it suffers D3 mortal wounds.
Right, it's a neat little D3 mortal wounds, good for, destroying the screen, triggering some battle shock. It's not that good for sniping heroes because we have to roll 1 for the hero. So I usually use it on, the screen units most of the time, really.
If you can find a unit with 6 models or more, you've got a guaranteed D3 mortal wounds. If you are going for an elite unit, whether it's a monster, whether it is, you've got to roll equal or less than the model. So if you're right, if you're going for a hero, going for that 1 is unreliable. And given that you don't get a lot of use of this one, you might get 2, 3 at most if you're really lucky. Yeah. I don't like to waste that on a hero unless it's like a Hail Mary.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I mean, rolling 1 itself is really low chance, and then doing the enough mortal wounds to kill him. Usually the screen units or the battle shock tests, most of the time.
Okay, so we get a nice D3 mortal wounds each turn. By the way, the light of the bad moon happens in the turn, so in between rounds, as opposed to it happening in your hero phase. So again, just keep that in mind. It doesn't actually come into play until round 2 at minimum. So round 1, you get no benefits.
All right.
The next one we've got is the Bad Moon Magic. So we don't have any natural wizards, do we?
Squig ones? No.
Yeah, I'm talking Squig. I'm talking Squig here. We do have magic casters, the Fungoid Cave-Shaman. We've got the Web Spinner Shaman. We've got a Ragnarok. We've got Scragger up the Loom King, for example. But we don't. If you are building a pure Squig list, there is no Squig wizards.
It's sad. Wasn't there one with the...
There was a narrative. There was a narrative set of rules that Ben Johnson, I think, had put together in like a narrative battle.
I remember there being one back in the days in the old fantasy. He had like the Squig holding there, wasn't riding it, but at least there was a Squig there. But yeah.
So if you want to use magic in a Squig list, you are going to have to go outside of Squig. So what I'm referring to here is that it is easy to do a 1 or a 2 drop army in this book, which is cool with the new rules. Mm-hmm. But if you do want a magic caster, Fungoid Cave-Shaman, Web Spinner Shaman, something like that, you will increase your drop slightly, but it's not an ally. So it's just something to keep in mind if you are going pure Squig, or if you're going to have like a bit of a mix.
Yep, exactly. I think you really want to play at least one magician in every Squig list. You don't really care about the drop there because it's so mandatory, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, and we'll show our list. We'll show off the list, and we'll talk why we've taken what we've taken. But it's just something to keep in mind. There's not a lot of people who can take advantage of that unless you go, again, Fungoid Cave-Shaman, some type of wizard.
Right. But the thing is, it doesn't. You can also use it on your enemy. It also subtracts 1 from the cast roll of enemy wizards affected by the light.
Yes.
So even if you don't have a wizard, you can get some use out of it. Yeah.
So the rule, by the way, guys, is that if under the light of the bad moon, if a wizard is under the light of the bad moon, they will, if they're a Gloomspite Gitz, they get to add 1 to the spell cast. If they are a enemy wizard, it is -1 to cast. So it might be something you put on your opponent's side as an attempt to debuff or make their wizard casting just a little bit harder.
Exactly.
The next rule we've got is the lunatic inspiration. So if your general has the Gloomspite Gitz keyword and they're affected by the bad moon, in the hero phase, they get extra CP. So for us, that's pretty good. We are quite CP heavy.
Yep. And who doesn't want the free command points? So that's just great. I think you always need to play around this. Like you always want to maximize this because we are really CP heavy. It's like 2 to 3 CPs per turn. So you really need this one to trigger every turn when possible.
Yeah, I did mention that we are a glass cannon, so we hit really hard. We hit like a heavyweight boxer, but we can't take the punch. So the best thing we want to start doing is thinking about how we can maximize our command points and really punch the opponent out so they can't punch us back. And for me, dropping 3, 4, 5 CPs in that one turn can be critical, whether it's to guarantee a charge, whether it's to re-roll those ones to hit, whether it's to activate the command ability of my general and leaders in general. So for me, that one is a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've finally got a couple of other ones, some that aren't going to really benefit us. So the Moon Clan Fungus Brew isn't really going to affect us. We're not taking a lot of Moon Clan grots.
Yep.
We've got the Spider Fang Venom. Again, none of our Squigs are Spider Fang Venom. Again, if we take in some spiders, different story. But for us as Squigs, not that useful. Troggoth Renewal, not that useful, again, unless you're taking a Troggoth model. But then the last one, which is a very valuable one to us, is the Lunar Squig. So if all of the models in a friendly Squig unit are affected under the light of the bad moon, at the start of the charge phase, they can attempt to charge even if they ran.
Yeah, this is what pushes the army from being mobile to being super fast, zooms all over the battlefield. If you can play around this, the most important thing of the rule is that it's after you moved, then you need to be affected by the light wholly within. So that's the most important part about it. This makes you go zooms, and that's exactly what you want.
Yeah, cool. So, and for us, obviously, the big benefit to this is that a lot of Squigs have random movement. I did mention that earlier with, when I talked to my opponent about my Mangler Squig. So getting that little bit of consistency by getting that additional dice can be really helpful. And then to get you in that charge, especially to propel you into your opponent. And the cool thing as well is that a lot of the Squig models like your Hoppers and your Boingrots fly, so that extra distance for the charge can actually then jump across screen. So, that can be very, very helpful, or at least to kind of deny your opponent with a whole bunch of board control. Adam, anything else you'd want to add to the generic rules that you get from the book?
The bad moon, I think this is it. The last one was the most important one for us, for sure. I mean, D3 Mortal Wounds is good, but if you can get your Squigs into the fight, I don't know, 1 round earlier, that's the most important one, for sure.
One of the things that we were talking about offline, team, before we went live is, one of my biggest pieces of advice, and I'm pretty sure I've shared with this on other Talking Gitz shows, is that the bad moon is a nice to have. I find that it's not something you can guarantee. It's something that you can plan for. It's not like the Deepkin moves. It's not like, Daughters of Cain. It's not like those other allegiances where turn 1, this is going to happen. Turn 2, this is going to happen. Because of the randomness, I've had times where I've gone into turn 2, I've rolled a dice, I've rolled a 1. The moon doesn't move from the corner, which means turn 2, there's no effect. There's been times where I've rolled a 6 and then all of a sudden it's sat in the center of the board. There's been times where, it's so unpredictable that my advice would be not to plan around it, but take advantage if it happens.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the whole theme of the whole army being random, so it just fits the theme nicely.
Yeah, I guess as a Squig player, it's not one of those things where I'm like, okay, turn 1, I'm going to do this, and then I set it up for turn 2, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and this, because those random movement rolls, those random bad moon rolls are just going to stop that plan straight out, and you're going to sit there going, you're really playing it like in the moment. Like when you roll a dice, you're just like, right, what do I do next? What do I do next? Because you just can't plan for this stuff.
Yep, exactly.
Which can be frustrating because, you know, a game that you thought you were going to win, you just fail horribly. But there's times where just unwinnable games just turn your way because the roll of the dice gods are very favorable to you. The other thing we're going to get here, and I guess this one is going to kind of be a muted one, is that in the Allegiance book, in our battle tomes, we do get this terrain piece. Now, on its own, it's rather useless. Like in the battle tome, it's rather useless because it mostly benefits our stabbers and our shooters, our generic Gitz models. Yes, we do get a wholly within 12 battle shock immunity, which is kind of cool. But for us, the real benefit comes in in the Jaws of Mork. So where do we start, Adam? So I guess you still get the terrain piece. But maybe I'll jump to the terrain piece first because we're already talking about it. So with the terrain piece, so it says here, you know, add the scenery rules to the war scroll. So basically what it allows you to do is that I could either take the Gitz version of the terrain piece, or I can take this version of the terrain piece. And it allows me to, if my general has a Squig keyword, after this terrain feature is set up, I do get to switch out. I switch out the rules. And basically at the end of the turn, sorry, at the end of each of your turns, you can pick one friendly Squig herd, Squig hopper, or Boingrot bounder unit that has been destroyed. If so, roll a dice. On a 4+, a new replacement unit with half of the models from that unit that was destroyed, rounding up, is added to your army. It must be set up as a replacement unit wholly within 12 of the friendly bad Moon Loonshrine and more than 3 inches away from enemies. Each destroyed unit can only be replaced once. So you can't destroy a unit and then it comes back and it keeps coming back. So thoughts on the Loonshrine, the Squig Shrine?
The Squig Shrine, I like that. So this rule, the swarms of the lurkers, is what makes you win attrition wars like 90% of the time. You're not dead, you can return whole units, you only return half, but it's still half more than most of the armies do. What's really great about it is that you can put the unit 3 inches away from enemy units. So setting up charges, you know, or for the Squig hoppers to jump over the unit is super easy with this rule. The only bad thing, it's not 100%. It's just on a 4+, which can, again, it's random. It's 50-50. Just, you know, toss a coin. Just as with everything in this army. It helps a lot. Like, it's a really good rule. It helped them a lot because they didn't have it before. But I would also want to get back a little on the 12-inch Battle Shock bubble. I think it's super important, actually, because this army, or the Squigs generally, or no, the whole army, the bravery is kind of really bad. I mean, you're talking 4s or 5s. So having the Battle Shock immunity against something like, I don't know, Garadron Overlord to just jump in the first round, shoot 5 off of each unit is just crucial. It's what makes and breaks the game, really. It's really
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have rushed the immunity to Battle Shock. I guess I rushed it a little bit because it's kind of self-explanatory. It is quite helpful. It's helpful. I find it mostly helpful mostly when I get, I guess, Alpha Strike. So turn 1, someone rushes into my face, or a Kharadron Overlord comes down and shoots me, or some type of, Stormcast comes in and shoots me. And I guess for me, the way I think about maybe is more screening as opposed to the Battle Shock immunity, but it is a nice to have as well. So good to know, especially maybe in the late game as well. You don't have to spend a command point to retain some of your models because your defenders of an objective are Battle Shock immune.
I have my sneaky stufflers are always hugging the shrine. They never leave, and I have so many games won just by the Battle Shock immunity of the sneaky snufflers holding the home objective. It's not even like, I don't know, I would say 30% of games get decided like that because it's just that good.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I use my snuffers a little bit different. We'll talk about them
Mhm.
very soon, actually, when we get into lists. But for me, what I really like about this is that majority of your army is returning. Squig Herd, Squig Hoppers, Boingrot Bounders, right? So if I take a unit of 10 Boingrot Bounders, when they die, on a 4+, I'm going to get a unit of 5 back. That's pretty sweet. That's very, very cool. That's 100 points every time. Or if I lose a unit of Squig Herd, so if I lose a unit of 6, I bring back 3. If I lose 18, I'm bringing back 9. So I'm getting free units, and there is some really nice combinations that we'll talk about very soon, or I will at least talk about. That's what I do. But it means that your Squig Herd, your Squig Hoppers, and your Boingrot Bounders are coming back on a 4+ as a new unit at half strength. So you are regenerating more, and it basically means you're going to have waves, right? You know, you throw your Squigs at your opponent at turn 1, turn 2. You don't have to worry about them dying too much because you will get a fresh unit back that you can keep going at your opponent, seizing objectives, claiming your backfield, whatever battle plan or strategy you might have.
What's great about it also is it's at the end of your turn, meaning you get double turned or something. At the end of your turn, you return a unit, then you will win the roll-off, and you suddenly have a unit that wasn't there a round ago that you can move with, do whatever with. Your opponent wasn't counting that it's going to be there. So yeah, it's really good. I love it.
So if your general is Squig, if they have the Squig keyword, you can swap out your Battle Tome Loonshrine to have this. But this is now where the rubber hits the road, and you get a whole bunch of additional allegiance rules by being Jaws of Mork. It does replace some of the existing rules, and we'll talk a bit about how the battalions kind of come into play. But you get a couple of extra rules. The first one is running riot. So you can run, you can re-roll the roll to determine the movement characteristic of friendly Squig units.
Right, because all of the Squig units, a part of the Squig Herd, have a random movement, as you said already. The Bounders have 2d6, the Hoppers and the Manglers have 3d6, the Colossal have 4d6, right?
Yeah.
This
you are. It's only the Squig Herd that doesn't have a random move. But you know, like your Loonboss on Giant Squig has a random move. Like there's a lot of random moves. For me, this is massive. This for me changed the game when it came to running Squigs at a competitive level, because it meant all of a sudden I can get consistency. I remember I played a game against Dan Brewer, a very, very, very talented Skaven player and just a generally competitive match play player. And I remember setting up this perfect combination. He had, 60 Scryer Acolytes that were super buffed up, or I was about to buff them up, and I got the jump on him. I was setting up for this perfect combination. I was going to go to get his... I was able to jump over his screen, his clan rat screens, and I was going to jump into his Scryer Acolytes. I was going to get his Vermin Lord, and I was going to get... I had this perfect combination. I rolled that movement. I rolled a 4 on my Loonboss on Mangler Squig, and that just shut everything off. Yeah. It meant that my all of my models that I was setting up and re-rolling charges and doing all these things, it just stuffed me up. So for me, this rule, this single-handedly changed the game for Squigs.
Yep, exactly. It adds the needed consistency. At least one thing is kind of consistent in this army. It's one thing to note, it's a reroll. So you can go back to the previous roll. I had more than once happened to me that I rerolled 4 into a 3 on the Mangler Squig. So yeah, that also happens.
It does happen, but getting that reroll can be big, and then in combination as well under the light of the bad moon and getting that run and charge can be quite good. So for me, running riot is massive. But wait, there's more. It's like some dodgy television ad. You do get additional command ability, so you get getting some Loonshrine down. Okay, you can use this command ability at the start of your at any phase. at any phase. If you do so, pick one friendly Jaws of Mork Mangler Squig model. Until the end of that phase, use the top row of that model's damage table, regardless of how many wounds it has suffered.
That's also really big. I will start with the first part, any phase. So the Mangler Squigs, when they lose life, they also lose movement. It's not 3d6, it's 2d6, then it's just 1d6. So making them move when you need them to move is crucial. This also won me so many games that you can move, much more reliably, even with the reroll and stuff. This also comes handy in combat, obviously, because they also lose attacks, and I think they Jaws hit worse or something. So this is also good for combat, obviously. One thing to note is that there is no ranges, no nothing. As long as you have a hero, you can use this, and your Mangler Squig will move or fight as you need it to.
The funny thing as well with this, with the Mangler Squig, for anyone who is not familiar with the Mangler Squig just yet, is that I describe it to my opponents like a roller coaster. So unlike a regular behemoth, which starts really good and then it just degrades slowly and becomes rubbish at its last bracket, the Mangler Squig is like a roller coaster where it goes good, dips to be shite, and then it becomes really good again. Like its last brackets are as good as its first bracket. So I always hate when I'm sitting on, I think it's 5 to 7, which is its worst profile. 5 to 7. I'm like, no. That's usually when I'm in combat. My opponent's chipped some wounds off my model, and I'm like fighting, and like I'm just praying for that final move into the 8. But being able to fight at the top bracket is massive. It does some real damage.
It was one
ball
of
and chain. It's got some real damage potential.
It was one of the biggest, weaknesses of the Mangler Squigs was that you get 5 wounds, 5 on a 4+ save model. That's easy. Anyone can do it. 20 clanrats can do that, and the model loses 50% of its usefulness. So this is big for them. Yeah.
I used to take the RIP, the Griffeather Charm, just to try to reduce some of that damage going to it. But obviously it's no longer around. But long story short, you being able to fight, and again, this kind of talks about why when we said this is a very heavy command point army, being able to fight at your top bracket, being able to re-roll your charge rolls, being able to re-roll ones to hit, being able to activate any of the other additional command abilities. You can see where that you really want to make the most of that punch to your opponent with Squigs.
Yep.
And anything else with your Mangler rule?
I think we covered the basics, really. The movement and the movement is really big thing. That's most people think about this only in combat, but the movement is much more crucial than the 2 attacks on the balls and chains, really.
Yeah. You can't win a game without having good movement. If you look at the armies who win games in Age of Sigmar, it is people who either can teleport, who can either choose where they move, or they have really high movement to choose where they want to fight. So this for me is critical. And you also you don't want to get bogged down into screens as well. Like the last thing you want to do is get bogged down into that unit of 30 Phoenix Guard, 60 Clan Rats, those units that you're just sitting there like wasting your damage when really you want to get to the back and get to that juicy center, get to that monster, get to that hero, get to that buff piece. There are 2 other things you're going to get. One is the command trait. The other is the artifact. The artifact for me is probably the trade-off. I'm not that impressed with the artifact. Maybe you have a different perception of it. But before we talk about that, you do get the command trait, which is Envoy of the Overbounders. You can re-roll failed battle shock tests for friendly Jaws of Mork units wholly within 12 of this general.
Yep, that's also huge for this army. As I said, you are on most of the army has 4 or 5 bravery. So this is really huge because you are going to be rolling battle shocks each and every round on most of your units usually. So this is big, yeah. And
all your units are multi-wound units as well. So your Squigs have 2, your Hoppers, your Boingrots, your Squig Herd have 2. I know the Squig Herd always catches my opponents out. They're like, that has 2 wounds. But you've got really low bravery. There are no banners. There are no ways that you can really buff that up other than your general +1 for 10 models. So anyway, you can get like an Inspiring Presence or re-rolling a failed Battle Shock test can be helpful.
Yep, exactly. What's also good, or I use this like once or twice, you can, if you have like a unit, I don't know, 5 or something, one of them or 2 of them dies, and you roll like 1 or 2, and just 1 would run away, you can use it to reroll the Battle Shock and hope for a 5 or 6 to wipe out the unit, so you can like bring it back with the Loonshrine. If you don't have any other units to bring back, that is, obviously. But yeah, I used it that way as well to make the unit go away. It's also a possibility.
There's another way that I like to use it as well. It's a bit cheeky, but I like to use it. And that is that your Squig herd can be like a little bomb, because when they flee, every time a model flees on a 4+, they do a mortal wound to their opponent. So if you really want to try to maximize that flee, and you do fail your Battle Shock test, if you want to try to get that number up to a 5 or a 6 or a higher, and increase that mortal wound output, that could be a sneaky little way if you're running lots of Squig herd.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love that. The artifact, the artifact is. I was a little disappointed with the artifact, but then I thought about it, and I'm like, everything else is pretty sweet, so I'll allow it. But the artifact is the Screamer Squig. At the start of the combat phase, you pick 1 enemy hero within 3 inches of the bearer. If you do so until your next hero phase, add 1 to the hit rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by the bearer that target this hero. It's okay.
It's decent, but you don't really have a hero to put it on most of the time. That's the main problem of the artifact, I would say. Cool thing about it is that at the start of the combat phase, it doesn't specify your combat phase. So you can get up to, I don't know, +2 to hit or even +3 to hit if you stack it on the hero you're fighting with. But it's about it. It's a down trade, as you said, but a decent one. Could be worse. I mean,
it's all right.
Yeah,
it's all right. But I guess someone might be looking at that thinking, oh, but it's all right. Like, it actually does some decent damage because you're creating like a +1 to hit bubble around that hero. I guess for me, I'm thinking about, I want to maybe combine that that Mangler Squig, maybe the thing that's going to be in combat, with something with maybe more damage output, or maybe something a bit more synergistic than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing you are going to get is 2 new battalions. They do replace the battalions that are in your battle tome. You will notice they have a very similar name. So you've got instead of the Squig Rider Stampede and they're very similar names, and they are exactly the same points. And I think they're even the same combination. But what you get is really cool. So under the Moonjumper Stampede, 2 to 3 Jaws of Mork units that either are Squig Hoppers, are either Squig Hoppers or Boingrots. So 2 to 3 Boingrots, 2 to 3 Hoppers, any combination, and 0 to 1 Mangler Squigs. You get to add 1 to the damage characteristic of their Fang-filled Gob, Massive Fang-filled Gob, and Huge Fang-filled Gob. Geez, make my life hard, guys. Weapons used by the units in this battalion if they make a charge move. So again, this talks about that hard-hitting punch, +1 damage. Do you like it?
I'm still not sure what's the biggest add from the White Dwarf, if it's the rerollable move or this battalion. I think it's just that good. It's just great. It's what makes Boingrots hit like a ton of bricks. It's what makes Hoppers actually be usable. Actually, the cool looking models we had for 2 years on our shelf, or a year or something on the shelves, we can use them now freely, and they are actually good.
Look for me, it's really nice. The damage is really good. I do like it. It does just put that extra punch in from those Hoppers and those Boingrots. So I think the movement for me is the biggest thing, but this is I guarantee you, in every of my Jaws of Mork list, the Stampede is definitely in there. This is a do not leave home without battalion.
Yep, exactly. One thing that always, when I see the battalion written like this, it specifies the Fang-filled Gob, which is, I believe, the Squig Gobbers, and the Boingrot Bounders, the Massive Fang-filled Gob, which is the Mangler Squig, and then it specifies the Huge Fang-filled Gobs, which is the Loonboss on the giant cave squig, which can't be part of the battalion. So I always think maybe they wanted to switch the battalions. Maybe he was supposed to be there, but it's sad. I always see the unfilled potential there.
I also was hoping, praying to the gods that the Colossal Squig would be included in here, but it's not. I do take the Colossal Squig. It is my absolute favorite. I've got 2 of them. I wish this included the Squig. What's the name? The spinning one. I've forgotten the name.
I know what you mean.
There's another Squig unit in Forge World, which is okay, but it doesn't have a lot of rend, and it's not a great unit. But anyway, so the Moon Jumper Stampede, good. Don't leave home without it. I love it. The Moon Biter for me is 50-50, depending on how you want to build it. I have seen some really competitive lists with a double Stampede. And I think there's some real legs on that. Thank you, chat. A Squig Gobber is the correct answer. The Gobber is a shooting artillery Squig. It is beautiful. It just doesn't have rend, which kills me.
Yep.
The rest, and we talked about this being potentially a 1-drop, and this is kind of how you get to the 1-drop build, the Moonbiter Squigalanche, and that includes 1 Jaws of Mork Loonboss on Mangler Squig or on Cave Squig, Giant Cave Squig. You can have 0 to 3 Jaws of Mork Loon bosses on Giant Cave Squigs, 1+ Moon Jumper Stampede, which is the battalion we just spoke about, 1 to 3 Jaws of Mork Mangler Squigs, and 0 to 2 Jaws of Mork Squig Herd units. Oh, and for that, I almost forgot the rules. For that, after the armies have been set up, but before the first battle round commences, up to D3 units from this battalion can move up to 6 inches. If both players can move, you roll off to see who moves first. So basically, you get a free move.
Yep, that's always good. I mean, this is all destruction ability that most of the destructions armies used to have. It's a nice bonus. I don't like the being at D3 units. So again, it's flipping a coin. You can't really play around it, but it's good in a sense that when you see that opponent made a mistake, you can, capitalize on it, move forward, set up yourself for easy charge the first round. If you are facing Alpha Strike army, you can move backwards. You can block off a teleport somewhere. You baited your opponent into setuping. This is multiple uses, really. And then also, you can fill most of the Squig units under this battalion, meaning the army is going to have very, very low drops, up to 1 drop even, which is the main, really, use. Why would you like to take this battalion? Not the ability, I would say.
There's a couple of things that I like from this battalion. You're right, 100%. This will get your drops to either 1 or 2. Or 3, like depending on how you kit them out, right? But this will capture almost everything, so you can really play that 1-drop game if you want to do it. I wouldn't suggest it. I would not go 1-drop. I think, as you've said, Adam, the Fungoid Cave-Shaman, for example, some type of wizard would at least be in this list. So kind of I would be playing around the 2 to 3 drops. The other things that I think about here is I like to include the Squig Herd units, and that allows me to push my screen out if there's going to be an Alpha Strike, whether it's KO, whether it's a summoning army, whether it's a fast movement army, it's a Deepkin Eel list. It allows me to push 1, 2 of those Squig Herd units forward so that they can kind of accept the charge, or they can accept the push back the deep strike. So for me, the Squig Herd, and because they're really cheap, they're a great screen. Or if I am going to be going first and I want to kind of punch my opponent in the face, metaphorically, not physically, please, no violence to your opponents. It does allow me to get potentially an additional 6 inches for that Loon Boss, that those Boingrots. So especially Boingrots who move only 2d6 really can use the extra movement and guaranteed 6 inches.
Yep, that's the only good thing about it, being guaranteed 6 inches. You don't have to roll d6 because there would be way too many dice rolling. But I would say 99% of the time I use it on Boingrots as well, being it moving them forward or backwards. If it's one unit, it's going to be Boingrots most of the time for me. Yeah.
For me, it's either the Boingrots, because I want that extra 6. It's the Mangler, so I can guarantee that it hits combat, being, again, even 3d6 isn't consistent. And in turn 1, you're not going to get the Light of the Bad Moon. So if you're going to go for a turn 1 attack, you need every advantage, and the Bad Moon's not there. Or it's the defensive build, which is pushing my Squig herds forward to deny the board, to claim an objective early, to contest a side of the board so people can't try to jump into my face.
There's multiple uses, yeah. I mean, it's a great tool, but yeah.
It's something to consider. Like I mentioned, I have seen a lot of people, I've seen a few people using double Stampede, the list that we just went through, but this will really get you down into the depths. But cool. So we've got 2 new battalions. They're quite cool. They are the same price as the Squig battalions in our book. I think it's like 90 and 140 points respectively. But you obviously get an extra command point. Here it is. You get an extra command point. You do get an extra artifact, and you do reduce your drops.
Yep. No, I agree. The reducing of the drops for this, as you said, it's glass cannon army. You most of the time need to begin, or at least be able to choose. That's the most critical thing there for me, at least.
Let's talk your list. So that's the rules in general, folks. And maybe for the first time ever, we're actually going to talk about one of my lists. We rarely talk about my lists. But before we do that, Adam is going to talk through one of his lists. So how does Adam put this theory into practice with all these rules? How do you build out the rules, and how do you think about your rules, and why have you chosen what you've chosen? So to kick things off, from a leader's point of view, you've got a Fungoid Cave-Shaman with the artifact of Plate of Perfect Protection. You are from the realm of Shimon, and you've got the lore of, you've got the Squig lore. Yeah. You've got your Loonboss on a giant cave Squig with the Moon Cutter, and you've got your Squig Screamer, so that's the Screamer Squig, sorry, which is your Jaws of Mork forced artifact. And then you've got your General, which is the Loonboss or Mangler Squig with the Envoy of the Overbounder and the Clammy Cow. So I will say, though, the command trait, I just remembered, it does make me cry a little bit that I can't use Fight Another Day. That's probably the biggest sacrifice by doing this, is I can't do Fight Another Day.
When I saw that there is a command trait you need to use, I was kind of sad because the Fight Another Day is just great. But when I played the army multiple times, I wasn't missing it as hard as I was expecting to. And I will get to why in a bit.
All right, so let's go through the rest of the list and then let's break it down. So you've got 10 hoppers, 10 hoppers, 10 hoppers, 10 Boingrots, 6 sneaky snufflers, Mangler Squig, and then we've got the Moonbiter battalion, and we've got the Moon Jumper Stampede battalion. So that comes in at 2,000 points on the nose. How many drops is this? This is
4.
4, because you've got the battalions. You've got the battalion. You've got the
shaman.
You've got the Fungoid Cave-Shaman. You do have the
snufflers.
The snufflers. That's 3.
And one of the units of the hoppers is not in the battalion because you can only fit in 3.
That's right. You get 2 to 3. You got 2 to 3. Yeah, cool. So this is a 4-drop list. Talk me through your leader choices. Talk me through first off the Loonboss on Mangler Squig, and then talk me through your supporting heroes.
Okay, the Loonboss on the Mangler Squig. This is just the big magnifier you have there with his command ability, that being that within 18 inches of him, you add 1 to wound rolls in the combat phase. So you have him there, basically. I don't know if it's him or them, because, 2 Squigs, 1 boss. But you move him in the middle of the board, basically, and use the command ability every time you can, because it buffs the whole army, because everything apart of the Fungoid Shaman and the Snufflers is the Squigs, so everything gets +1 to wound, which is huge. For the command trait, it's the Envoy of the Overbounder, which is the reroll of the Battle Shocks. It's good on this unit because it's fast. It's going to be up in there. So around most of the unit, it's going to be in the middle of the field, so you can get most out of the trait. The Clemical is another layer of protection. It gives -1 to hit for everything, for shooting and in the combat phase. So
that to me is massive. The subtracting 1 to hit for attacks that target the bearer, which is both combat and for shooting. Again, we talked about the survivability, and you want to keep your Mangler Squig on as minimal damage taken as possible. That -1 to hit can be very helpful, and he's got a 4+ armor save as well, so it's quite generous.
And it's most important to keep this piece alive because of the command ability it gives to the whole army. So that's why he's the one bearing it, I guess. Yeah. Also, he's great in combat. Obviously, all Mangler Squigs are great when they charge with and use the command ability with the balls and chains. They hit on 2s, bolt on 2s, rent -2, D3 damage, 7 attacks. Just they do a lot. D6 hits on the gobs as well. They're kind of swingy because they don't have that much attacks apart from the balls and chains that usually get 5 or 6 through. But on the Jaws, it's 3s and 2s on charge with the command ability. It's not that great, but it's just 4 attacks, so it can get swingy, and it's D6 damage. So you're gonna do 3 damage, and you're gonna do 18 damage as well. So.
And when you charge with the Mangler Squig, you also get +1 to hit rolls for that ball of chains, right? So, so really, bringing that down to hitting on 2s and then wounding on 2s because you add +1 to the wound roll for friendly Squigs within 18. For me, that command ability is just money. And I'll talk in my list how I use the Bite de Moon. But it is swingy. It does a lot of high damage. It is D6 damage for the gob, D3 damage for the ball and chains. So obviously we get the +1 for the battalion. So you really, when you're using it, you want whatever you attack, you want to delete it or you want to reduce it as much as possible. So this is where you're like, I drop 2-3 command points on this one model alone, whether it's re-rolling 1s to hit, whether it is going to be using Bite de Moon. You really want to, like, for me, my army centers around the Loonboss or Mangler Squig.
Yep, exactly.
And there's a positioning for the 18, the friendly Squigs who get +1 to wound. They have to be wholly within 18 of this model. So really positioning where you want to project your center of power and then making sure that your other supporting Squig units are within that 18 bubble.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I like to keep him in the middle. So he basically, gets most of the field that way.
Cool. Yep. By the way, 2 Squigs, 1 Loonboss sounds like a really bad adult movie.
Yeah, I heard it when I said it. Yeah,
I just wanted to call it out because it was beautiful. It's beautiful. I better not Google that.
Right. Then we move on to the Loonboss and the giant cave Squig. Again, his main use or why he's there is because of his command ability again, which says add +3 to move to friendly Squig units within 12 inches, I believe, wholly within 12 inches, which adds some extra movement. It's great. It's 3 inches, so you're gonna move at least 6 inches if you roll 3d6 per move.
It's within 12, yeah, wholly within 12.
He's pretty decent in fighting because the Squig has -1 rend and D3 damage, so he can pick up the small heroes. The artifact, I put it because I don't have anywhere to put it, really, because he.
You don't want that Screamer Squig on your Mangler, as you've shown. The value of Clammy Cow is far greater on the Mangler, so you got to put it somewhere.
Exactly, yeah, and he gets in. As I said, I mostly use him as a snipe unit, the small heroes, and it comes in handy in that way that he can use it on them and get the extra +1 to hit. Makes him more consistent. Exactly. The main problem with him is he only moves 2d6 just as the bounders, and sometimes the army outruns him. So sometimes it's hard to keep up with the army, so you can give the movement speed. But I would say the most crucial one is the first round anyway, where you can set up in the deploy and then with the battalion even. get the +3 on as many units as possible, and that's usually his main job. Use it once and then survive.
Yeah, I find the Loon boss on Giant Cave Squig really sits behind the lines. They act almost like a wizard as opposed to being a frontline general like the Mangler Squig. You're probably unlikely to get them in combat. Where I find the Cave Squig is really good is defending maybe home objectives, running around and supporting, say, your Boingrot Bounders, not your Boingrot Bounders, your Hoppers, because your Hoppers aren't as offensive as your Boingrot. So I find it's more of a backfield kind of model. But you're right, getting the most out of that first turn, like first 2 turns before they overrun him, because the 2d6, it's one bad dice roll away from being outside of your wholly within 12, or being outside of your inspiring presence or any of the command abilities.
Yeah, and another good use for him is that you have 3 heroes only, right? But the Fungoid Shaman stays in back the whole time, and when your Mangler Squig dies, there's no one to pay the battle shock immunity for your units. So there is another use that I usually get out of him,
His combat's all right, but again, it's also not very high damage too. So, nice little supporting hero. But the Fungoid Cave-Shaman is, I'm almost at, I would not leave home without him. If I only had one wizard choice, he's like 99%. There's only one build where I'm tempted not to go Fungoid Cave-Shaman. But talk to me about why he is in the list.
Right. The first is his ability that at the beginning of your hero phase on the 4+, he generates another command point. As we already stressed out many times, you are very, very CP hungry, and every extra command point is the difference between death and victory, really. So this is just huge. This also means if you start with both battalions and you get 1 for the first round and you generate 1 by the Fungoid Shaman, you have 4 in the first round, which is really good. But the main thing why he's there is the Squig lure. That's just, it's just auto include even just for the spell. At least one wizard has to be there for the Squig lure. What it does, I believe it's a cast on a 6, and you pick D3 friendly Squig units within 18 inches of him, and those units, or the 5 actually, yeah.
It's cast on a 5, yeah. I was gonna so yes, you cast it on a 5. If successfully cast, pick D3 friendly Squig units wholly within 18 of the caster and visible to them. Those units can run and still charge later in the turn.
Right. As we said, the moon is not really reliable in any way. You can roll 1, you can roll 6. It moves wherever it wants. And here you get the some reliability. Again, you have to cast it, but it's just on the 5. It's D3 again, so it's a huge difference if you can put it just on a 1 unit or on a 3 units. Most of the time, you are going to put this on the bounders. As we said, they are slower than the rest of the army. They just do the 6 movement. But this is, if you add this with the +3 movement from the Giant Cave Squig boss, and you add in the charge, possible 12 in charge, let's say, let's say Mangler Squigs can threaten up to 39 inches. It's a 4d6 move, +3 for the 3d6 move, d6 for run, and a +3 from the Giant Cave Squig. So it's up to 27 inches, and then a charge. So this puts your opponent to a very weird spot when they have to, because they cannot. I mean, if you are playing against, I don't know, Iron Jaws, the Gruntas move 9, and then over the Mighty Destroyers, they're going to move another 9, so it's 18 inches. Here, I don't know. You don't know. No one knows. The dice doesn't know. It's going to be somewhere, and they have to choose the safe spot for them. They go by, average usually, from my experience, so it's like, I don't know, 17, 18 inches. And it's just one good roll away from you having a charger on a 3 or something. So it's really your strength and a weakness at the same time.
The thing about the Squig lure for me is that ability comes obviously with the bad moon, but that doesn't come until at least turn 2. at least turn 2. And sometimes it doesn't happen at all. There's been plenty of games where I've rolled my bad moon and I've rolled consecutive 1s until turn 5. It's just unfortunately how sometimes a cookie crumbles. However, the other cool benefits that the Fungoid Cave-Shaman brings is it's got a 4+ after save. So while it's a squishy hero with 4 wounds, you do get some really good versatility. It is going to kind of hang around a little bit, just to avoid the corn, what's it called, Hex Gorgeous Skulls that has popped so many of my Fungoid Cave-Shamans. And it also has got a very cool once per game. It can be a double caster as well.
Correct.
So it is going to generate you command points on a 4+. It has a double cast once per game. So if you did have, let's say, Squig Lure and you wanted to cast an endless spell, for example, you could do that once per game. It is a nice little support piece. I'm not a big fan of its spell, the Spore Mauls. It's for me, I'm not a big fan of it. But it's nice if you do get stuck in a combat. If he happens to be in combat, it could be something that could help it.
The problem is that usually, apart from a Mystic Shield, it doesn't really do much for you because your whole army has not really good saves. You don't really have a second spell to cast most of the time. I barely use the once per game ability, and I also
I use it for endless spells.
Right, if you have,
and I think yeah.
And also I have the Plate of the Perfect Protection on him, which is the artifact from Shaman, which makes the bearer ignore rents of 1 or something.
It ignores rend 1. I've got that in my Gargants. I love that artifact.
Yeah, there's not really so. The one thing to note, Fungoid Shaman cannot have any artifact from the book itself because he doesn't have the keywords. So the only artifact you can give to him is from the realms. And there's like reroll 1s to hit, reroll 1s to saves. We have the 6-up save, so it doesn't really make much. So this is like the only viable thing there that gives at least some survivability to him.
It could be a deterrent, right? Because if you're ignoring rend 1, assuming the Fungoid Cave-Shaman is near a unit, it could be -1 to hit from Lookout Sir. It could be enough for someone to not target it in target priority and go for something else that's a bit more guaranteed. Is it going to change the world? No, but it could be the difference between it staying alive and not staying alive, or not being targeted.
Exactly. Yeah, that's basically the leader's choice. We move to the units. I will start.
Yeah. So you got your 10. So just to remind the podcast friends, you got 10 Squig Hoppers, 10 Squig Hoppers, 10 Squig Hoppers, 10 Boing Grok Bounders. As we've already identified, one of those Squig Hopper units is not in the battalion. 6 Sneaky Snufflers, 2 Mangler Squigs. Not Loonboss, straight up Mangler Squigs.
So I believe I'm not sure if you need to have one in the battalion. You need.
What's that?
In the Squigalanche, you at least need to have 1 Mangler Squig.
Yes.
So at least you are going to be playing one. You don't need to have the Loonboss on the Mangler Squig because the giant cave Squig, a Loonboss, can take his place in the battalion. But you're gonna have at least one there anyway. I love the models. They are so beautiful. There's so much details on them. As we already established with the Loonboss, they hit like a truck if they have the opportunity. When I look back in time, before we had the rules, before we had the command ability, their main problem was that they are kind of glass cannon as the whole army. It's 12 wounds on a 4+ save, so it's not that hard to kill them. But it's not about killing them, it's about doing them 5 to 7 damage. Keeping them in the lowest bracket and making them useless. Now with the command ability and enough command points, that's not the problem. And I also have another way how to protect them. That's how I play it. And that's also why I don't miss the fight another day as much, because there was another way how to protect your Mangler Squigs, right? And that's the Squig Hoppers. Back in the day, without the battalion, they hit like a wet noodle. They don't really do anything. They They have cool ability. When they move over a unit on a 4+, they do a mortal wound, and they move fast. So you can
They move
use
3d6.
So they moved as fast as the Mangler Squig, and that's the main point. That's the only unit in the whole army that can keep up with the Mangler Squigs. And they are, as you said, all of them are 2 wounds units. They have only 6+ save, but it's 20 wounds in the unit. So what I do, I charge with the hoppers, try to pull in as much of the unit as possible, make them lock in the combat, and then charge with the Mangler Squig from a side. So it's protected, not as many units or models can pile to it. And they take the beating for the Mangler Squig, keeping it healthy, And that's the biggest use they have, really. And also, since they are in the battalion, or at least the 2 units, they can now actually kill the screen. Because with the 2 damage, they can kill, 10-something or 20-something. And make the room for the Mangler Squig to pile in and punch behind, because you have a 3-inch pile in, then 2-inch with the balls and chain, so it's 5-inch reach basically, if you do it right. So you can hit backline heroes, backline units they are screening very, very easily. So that's why I opted to play 3 tens of hoppers. Even though the 1 unit is not in the battalion, it can still take the beating for the Mangler Squigs. It still has its use. It's not as good as killing screen, obviously, because the riders, they have 1 attack, hit on 5s and wound on 4s, no rend damage 1. So,
the riders aren't doing much damage. The damage is coming from the Squig, the gobs from the Squig. But even then, it's to hit roll. It hits on a 4, wounds on a 3, rend 1 for 1. Obviously, that boosts up to a 2 through the battalion.
And
you do get plus. Yeah,
and you use the command ability from the Mangler Squig, so you wound on 2s. Yeah.
It's that 4+ to hit is 50-50, right?
It is what it is, I guess. They have 2 attacks each, so at least 1 from each model is going to go through in, basically, math-wise. So, they can do 10-15 damage, which is enough just to kill the chaff from the screen.
It's interesting here you talking about Squig hoppers offensively, because I don't think about them offensively. I always think about them as defensively or objective stealers. I take them in small units. I run them around. I try to go for objectives. I don't hear about them very offensively. Everyone talks about Boingrots as the offensive version of it. So it's interesting to hear how you use it in combination with your Mangler Squig. So then how does the Boingrot Bounders come into play in combination with your Squig hoppers and the Mangler?
I would love to fill in more Bounders, because they are just so great right now. So the Boingrot Bounders and the Sneaky Snufflers, that's a package, basically. That's a package deal you need to have. The Sneaky Snufflers push them all over the moon. That's what makes them crazy. So what the Sneaky Snufflers does is that at the beginning of your movement speed, movement round, what's it called? Movement phase.
At the start of the movement phase, you can say this unit is harvesting the loon cap mushrooms. If you do so, it can't move in that movement phase, but you can roll a dice. If the roll is if the roll is less than or equal to the number of models in that unit, pick 1 friendly Moon Clan unit wholly within 12 of this unit, so wholly within 12 of the Snufflers, and you get to add +1 attack characteristic to the melee weapons used by that unit until the next movement phase.
Yep. So, first round, every time you're gonna set up, your Snufflers, and before in front of them the Bounders, and just give it to them automatically the first time for sure. So now they have 3 attacks on the riders and on the mounts, and hits on 4s, wounds on 2s, -1 rend, and a 1 damage for the rider and 2 damage for the Squig. It's mental. +2 on a wound with the command ability from the Mangler Squig, obviously. What's so great about them is the base size. It's 32 millimeters. So it's the classic, unit base. And I would say screening against them is a nightmare. It's almost impossible. You would think screening against eels is hard, that's nothing compared to screening against boundaries. They can jump over as I didn't say, the whole army flies. So they can jump over the screen, they can fill every little hole you leave there. And they also have this ability that on a charge, you roll that many models, the many dice as there are as much models in the unit, and each 4+ does mortal wound. So you can even charge screen unit, give it, I don't know, 5-6 mortal wounds. This creates your space, you pile in and punch the second line again.
And it's worth calling out here with the boing smash rule that we're talking about. All that needs to happen is one boing grot bounder needs to connect and be within an inch of the unit. So it's not every model within 1 inch. It's just as long as you connect within an inch. After the charge on the 4+, you generate a mortal wound. So yeah, that unit of 10, for example, if it was fully 10, it has an average output of 5 mortal wounds on the charge, and then it goes through combination, getting the +1 damage from the bite, plus the other obviously generic damage that it does. And you do get +1 to wound when you charge. So really you start noticing that between the Mangler, between the Boingrots, between just generally, the army is rewarding you for being the person who charges. So you don't want to be charged, you want to be doing all the charges. So any way that you can synergize and charge, that's really the build, and that's the play style that you're considering.
Yep, definitely. You need to charge. I mean, if you get charged, you lost, basically. You lose the 1 damage, you don't get the +1 to hit on the Manglers, on the balls and chain. It goes all bad really quick if you get charged.
And then you've got your 2 Manglers. So these are 2. And by the way, the battalion, I just reread it. So it's 0 to 1. So you don't have to take a Mangler in the Stampede, but it is an optional way to get that damage output under the battalion. But so talk to me about the sorry.
You need 1 in the Squigalanche.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in the Squigalanche, yes, you do. Yeah. But in the Stampede, it's 0 to 1.
Exactly. And it's the D6 damage 1, so it's D6 +1, so you can do even 7 wounds, which is really good sometimes.
So you've taken 2 Manglers. You've taken 2 of these non-hero versions of the Mangler Squig.
Yep. So it's 3 Mangler Squigs in total, basically, yeah.
So you're projecting your power through 3 Mangler Squigs in support with Boingrots and Hoppers that are screening, that are taking around the board, that are chipping away, doing damage, and probably overwhelming your opponent with priority. You're probably having, for every one of those one of their guys in combat, you've probably got 2 units in combat.
Absolutely. You pick the fights. You need to pick the fights. You are the one who's charging. So usually, most of the time, you really just charge with everything the first round or the second round with this list. So, yeah. And also the great thing, because everyone sees a big model. They see Mangler Squigs, and they think, oh, they are the biggest bats of the list, so we need to kill the Mangler Squigs. But in reality, it's the Boingro Bounders with the sneaky snufflers. They hit the hardest of the whole list. And the Manglers there are just like a diversion, and it works 99% of the time, really.
What's really cool as well is the watch out rule, which is if this model is slain, so when the Mangler Squig dies, before the model is removed from play, each roll a dice for each unit within 6 inches of this model. On a 4+, it takes D3 mortal wounds. So it does a whole bunch of things as well when they go out. So basically, you punch your opponent as hard as possible. You probably will take some damage because it does have a 4+ armor save. It has 12 wounds, so it's all right. Actually, it's pretty good when you think about it. And then when it goes out, it's going to do some damage as well. So, even if you can get close to, let's say, an opponent hero or some type of small support unit, that D3 could either slay it outright, or it could actually just chip it down significantly.
Absolutely. And as I said, the way I use my sneaky snufflers, they are by the Loonshrine all the time, because when you roll for the rule, you return the unit, they have something to buff each round. The 99% of the games, they don't really move from the Loonshrine. Just give out the shrooms,
Yeah, I think in combination with the loon boss on Mangler Squig, when you start looking at this damage profile, you're getting +1 to hit with the balls and chains on the charge. That that's up to 7 attacks, hitting on 2s, and then in combination with the battalion, the command ability from the boss, bringing that wound roll down to 2, Ren 2 for D3 damage, and then doing your gob attacks, 4 attacks. Rend 1, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, D6 +1 damage because of the battalion. This becomes really nasty, and the damage output is significant. But it goes back to what I said right at the start: is that if you don't have the movement, this plan will crumble, and you will be. I was going to use an Australian slang, but it's probably not PG. It's not PG enough for me to say it here. You will be sitting out in the middle of the table, and you won't take advantage of it, and your opponent's just going to smash you. They'll mortal wound you with spells. They'll hit you with shooting. They'll charge you, and you'll lose half of your damage output because you weren't the one who charged.
Exactly. I mean, I had on the turns I charged. I had games when I deleted, I don't know, over 1,000 points of enemy's army, even 1,500 points, just the on a charge. It can happen. I mean, if you roll hard or something, you can delete.
Well, I remember at Adepticon last year, this is just as Khorne's battle tome changed, so take this with a grain of salt. But my Mangler Squig, my Loonboss and Mangler Squig alone killed 6 Skull Crushers by itself in one turn. It can be absolutely brutal, but then there's been plenty of times where it's just whiffed and done nothing. And as I mentioned, man, going into Nighthaunt, all the damage comes off the back of Rend. So if you're ignoring Rend, I played Sylvaneth, funnily enough. I played Sylvaneth the other week, and I had a whole bunch of Kurnoth Hunters who obviously in Dreadwood chucked down their roots, and they got to reroll their saves. My bites did nothing. They just absolutely did nothing.
It happens,
yeah.
So I chose to play this army really aggressive, really fast, pick my fights, go ham. That's the reason why I don't have any Squig herd here, because it doesn't really fit the playstyle with their move of 5. They just can't keep up with the army. Even though if I would drop the 10 hoppers and get some Squig there, I would have less drops. But they would just be useless there, sitting in the back, doing nothing, really.
Yeah, fair enough. Anything else you'd add to this? So this is obviously a 2,000 points on the nose, 136 wounds. You've got no endless spells. You are a 4-drop, which is pretty good. Like, if you can't be 1-drop, if you're not trying to be a 1-drop, 3 to 4 drop is pretty safe to say that you will dictate the terms of battle. And out of curiosity, would you, obviously each game, each scenario is going to be different, but on average, are you more likely to give away first turn, or would you take first turn if you had the option to choose?
It really depends on the scenario, I would say, because
on average, give me an average.
If it's an 18-inch deploy, I'm going to take it 90% of the time. If it's a 24-inch deploy, I'm usually going to let the enemy start. That, I would say, it's the rule of thumb.
Yeah, I think most cases I'm giving it away just because their spellcasters, their shooters are mostly out of range, so that, they waste a turn. There'll be some things where you're right, like if it's a shorter deployment zone and I think I can get into combat, or I can get into the juicier combats.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe hit them. Like I played an OBR list the other week, and I wanted to hit them before they put up their buffs, right? Putting up, their shields, doing all that stuff. So I took first turn to kind of hit them in the face as quick as possible before those buffs go up.
Yep. Or even if you see like a little hole in the deploy, you see a little mistake there, you use the Squigalanche, move 6 inches, and you go ham. Like, it's so good army at punishing people's mistakes, I would say.
Yeah, and even the Mangler Squig's base is the Mangler Squig base is only 60 mil, so it's quite, or 80 mil. Like it's not a huge base. It's not, you're not talking like some crazy 130, 160 mil base. So it can jump over screens because it flies as well. So it's quite generous, and it will punish your opponent.
Agreed. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's your list, Adam. I'm going to reveal one of my first lists on the channel. It's 3 years, and I rarely talk about my armies. I should probably talk more about my armies. So a lot of what Adam's already spoken about, there is a lot of synergy, given that Squigs in general have there's a limited amount of Squig units, right? So there's going to be a lot of things we've kind of already covered the same ground. So if we look at my army, I have come from the realm of Shyish. However, I actually no, that's a mistake because I made this list before War Scroll Builder was updated. That's right. Ignore this because there should be an extra artifact, and that would obviously be on the Cave Squig. So what have you got here? We've got the Loonboss or Mangler Squig is the general. It does have the Clammy Cow, Surprise the Century, so that's the -1 to hit. You will have the Fungoid Cave-Shaman, where I've taken the Grave Sand Brooch, so that's reroll once to save. Again, it's much of a much. You're right, 100%, Adam, that there's not a lot of artifact choices for the Fungoid. It is almost worth switching out the Fungoid Cave-Shaman for a Madcup Shaman, just because you can get Moonface Moment. But the additional command points is just too good for me and the Cave-Shaman. The other hero that I've got is the Loonboss on the Giant Cave Squig. It has the Jaws of Mork artifact. Again, I built this list before War Scroll Builder. Don't at me. So we have a very similar build here. Add or take the Realm artifact. But the difference between our heroes is that I've gone the Hand of Gork. Now, the Hand of Gork is one of my favorite spells, and I could not leave home without it. The reason for it is it essentially is a teleport. So this whole idea, I guess the way I think about my Squig build is it's more like a wave. So basically what my Fungoid Cave-Shaman will do behind the line is it will sit close to the Loonshrine. The Hand of Gork is a cast value of, I'm just trying to quickly bring it up. It's a cast value of 6, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure where's my battle tome, so can't check.
That's all right. I've got it here. Casting value of 7. So the Hand of Gork is casting value of 7. If successfully cast, pick up 1 friendly Gloomspite Gitz unit wholly within 12 of the cast. So 24 of the caster. So it's a very generous number. It's visible to it, and it's more than 3 inches away from an enemy. You pick up that model or that unit and remove it from the battlefield and set it up anywhere as long as it's outside of 9 inches from the enemy unit. It cannot move in that subsequent movement phase. So the way I'm thinking about this is it can either I can pick up my, I'll bring it up in a second, but what you've got here as well is I've got 5 Squig Hoppers, 10 Boy Grot Bounders, 10 Boy Grot Bounders, 18 Squig Herd, 18 Squig Herd, 6 Seeky Slufflers, and a Colossal Squig. So I love my Colossal Squig, and I'll talk a bit about why in a minute. It also comes in with the Squig Rider Stampede and a Squigalanche. So both the Jaws of Mork version, again, reinforcing this was built before War Scroll Builder was updated. So the idea between why I've got the Hand of Gork instead of Squig Lure is that for me with Hand of Gork, I throw my Boy Grot Bounders or my Squig Hoppers up into the enemy, or maybe even a Squig Herd into the enemy. What I'm then thinking about doing is, should they be damaged and they come back half strength on a 4+, I can then use my Fungoid Cave-Shaman to pick up that regenerated unit from the Loonshrine and throw it at my opponent. So this, for me, for Squigs, when I think about Squigs, they are very much about the early game. They are about scoring objectives early. They're about doing damage early. And as the game progresses, they get worse and worse and worse. So while my army is being reduced, while my army is losing its movement, the Fungoid Cave-Shaman becomes a late game threat to be able to pick up any unit and score an objective, whether the opponent's walked off it, whether I've been able to do enough damage, whether I need to pick something up and reposition or resecure on the tabletop. So that's why I've gone Hand of Gork instead of Squig Lure. Adam, any thoughts? I might bring you into the conversation. I just did all the talking. Right. I've never been on this side. I've never been on this side talking about my own list. No. What are your thoughts on what I just said about Hand of Gork?
No, it makes sense. I mean, it's a good spell. I just don't feel that on units that can move up to 30 inches, you really need a teleport.
for me, it's about getting to those backfield objectives with a reduced unit, right? So if I have a unit of let's say those 5 Squig hoppers, that goes to a unit of 3. The base size is very, very small, so I can squeeze into the back and steal an objective a lot easier with such a small footprint. But it's enough to steal an objective or deny an objective, or at least challenge an objective.
Right. And it's great with the Squig herd because, as I said, it's kind of slow, and you can pick it up, move it there in his face, let them run away, do the mortal wounds and everything. It's also a good combo.
By the way, if this is the first time you've seen a talking series, this is just us putting this all into the theory into practice. By no means are we saying that this is the single only way to play Jaws of Mork. This is the silver bullet. This is going to win you the next great tournament. This is about putting the theory into practice. You season to taste. If you like more hoppers like Adam, you go more hoppers. If you want to bring a gobbler in, you want to bring in 2 colossal squigs. If you want to bring in some generic grots or spiders, you do you. You bring in your own army, season to taste. So I've got the hoppers, as I mentioned. They are very similar to you, but I'm not using them as offensively as you. I'm more using them on the sides of the board to steal objectives, go for objectives early. I'm using them more as like board control as opposed to damage and screening, because where I'm getting my screens from are my 2 units of 18 Squig herd. So there is 36 wounds in each of those units, being that there are 2 wounds apiece. They do fit under the battalion. So this is a 3-drop. The Fungoid, Cave-Shaman, and the Colossal Squig being the ones outside of the battalion.
And the Snuffers, no?
Pardon?
And the Sneaky Snuffers?
Sorry, yes, of course. Sorry. So yes, the battalion, the Snufflers, Colossal, Fungoid. Sorry, 4 drops. You're right. Sorry, 4 drops. That's why you're so the Squig herd for me really take advantage of that free 6-inch move. So if I am facing a Kharadron Overlords, a summoning unit, a teleporting army, some type of army that's going to rush into my face, an Iron Jaws, Iron Suns, or Beast Claw Raiders, it allows me to push those Squig herd forward 6 inches, because I'm going to get 1, average 2, luckily 3. So they're a nice little screen. And if they die, I'm okay with that, because they're going to do mortal wounds when they run away and die. And then I can regenerate half of them and bring back 9 Squig herd on a 4+.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I mean it's a great unit. Yeah, I love it.
It is. I would like to take. So I've played around with this a little bit, and I'm tempted to drop the sneaky snufflers. And I'd rather maybe another unit of, say, Squig herd, and maybe bring those units into more like units of 12 and maybe boost up the Squig hoppers. But for me, the Squig herd allows me to be in the battalion and gives me the screens and gives me some nice little blobs as well. Like 18 across the board can take up a lot of space, or it can deny up a lot of the objective.
Right. And they have the natural rerolls to charge, right? From the
Prada, the musician.
Yeah. Which is also handy, especially with the teleport, right? Because you get the free reroll.
Yeah. The other ones as well is so the Boingrog Bounders are probably more offensively. So I don't have the offensive Squig hoppers. My Boingrog Bounders are my offensive guys. They're running up, doing extra damage. I've got big blocks of 2 units of 10, so there's a whole bunch of zapping happening on that 4+ on the charge. And I am tempted to go units of 15. Not that 15 can get into combat, but you are maximizing the zap, and you are when they come back, you're bringing back a unit of 7 as opposed to a unit of 5. So I think I am tempted to go units of 15. But before the Jaws of Mork, I would never do 15. It's too many points in one unit. But then the challenge that I personally have is when I then move up to 300 points for a unit of Boingrots, am I better off with the Colossal Squig? And for me, my favorite unit in this game, well, at least in Gloomspite Gitz, is the Colossal Squig. It is a Forge World model. It's my absolute favorite, and I brought it in because of the damage potential and some of the sneaky snuff. So it's 16 wounds. So the Colossal Squig is 16 wounds. So for me, that is the highest wounds that it can take. It's massive compared to, let's say, your Mangler Squig. It's got some really cool rules. So it does have a missile, a shooting attack, though it hits on a 5, wins on a 5. It does D3 damage, but it's pretty inconsistent. But for me, the money comes in with the jaw attack. So it has a 3-inch jaw attack. You get 8 attacks from them. It hits on a 2 and it wounds on a 3. So it can synergize with the Loonboss on Mangler Squigs. It only hits on a 2, wounds on a 2. It has Ren 2 for D3 damage. But if you roll a 6 to hit, it will do mortal wounds instead. So, and that profile the 8 attacks never degrades. So for me, I'm fishing for 6s, and no matter however long that Colossal Squig's on the table, as long as I roll a 6, I'm doing a whole bunch of mortal wounds. Even though the profile is degrading on the hit roll, the 8 attacks is consistent. It does do some mortal wounds on the charge if I think it's on a 6, so it's okay. But it's naturally -1 to hit, so the puff spores in melee is -1 to hit, so that's a nice little sneaky thing. But then the coup de grace for me is that when it dies, it actually creates cave squigs. So it actually brings in some squig herd when it dies. So when it dies, it does some mortal wounds, very similar to the Mangler Squig. But then you get to set up a unit of little squiggies. So you set up 5 cave squigs in your army, wholly within 9, outside of 3. So from a squig herd point of view, you get some extra little rules.
Yep. It's a good thing when the small squigs die, you can also return them through the Loonshrine.
Yeah. So for me, there's a question in the chat here that said, asking about the Colossal Squig versus the Mangler Squig. For me, the Colossal Squig doesn't have the synergies as the Mangler Squig, just because it's not a part of the Jaws of Mork. So I don't get the +1 to the bite weapon. But it's a model that I can use on the table, and I don't need to babysit it. I don't need to synergize it. I can literally just take it and it runs forward. Speaking of running forward, at full strength, it moves 4d6. So under Light of the Bad Moon, adding the charge, that could be 5d6 before you charge. So a 4d6 movement means 24 inches, and in most maps, if you deploy that on the line at maximum range, you're charging you're charging any turn you want to charge it.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. I agree. I think the Mangler Squig does a little bit more damage, but the Colossal Squig is less swingy. It's, you said, it's a standalone model, doesn't need any support.
It doesn't fly. It doesn't fly, which is one of the bugbears. So you got to be very careful not to. And it's a big base. I think it's like 90 by 120. So it's easy to get caught up in terrain or your own model. So you got to be very, very, very conscious of where you position it, and it can't jump over screens.
Yeah, but I like the model. Obviously, it's a giant squig. So what's there not to like? I like the rules. I was thinking about trying it, actually. I just never got the chance. I got so used to my list. I don't want to change anything these days.
And again, it goes back to the episode, but we're sharing ideas. And if you don't like the Colossal Squig or you love the Colossal Squig, there's a couple of options for you. Another good question from the chat was talking about the value of the Squig Gobber. So the Squig Gobber is another model from Forge World. There are 2 Squig Forge World models. It is an artillery piece, so it has a range of 30 from memory, 24 to 30. It does like 6 attacks, hits on a 4, wounds on 3. It's an okay profile, but what kills me with the Squig Gobber is that it has no rend. So it's quite hard to hit with it. And then when it does hit, it doesn't do a lot of damage, I find. But where I do find it's really good is it can be a nice backfield objective holder, and it does some good damage in combat. So it can actually defend an objective quite well. The shooting attack is almost like a bonus. For me, the Squig Gobber, I'd love if it had a little bit of rend, or I could get a little bit more consistency in the attacks. I would bring a Squig Gobber, but not right now, unless I really love the model, and I do love the model.
How much points is it? Is it around 100 something?
Last time I checked, it was 160, which is a tough pill to swallow. Yeah, so like the Squig, you know, it hits. It has range 36 attacks, hits on a 4, wounds on a 3, no rend for D3 damage. So for me, that'd be really good for picking out support heroes if I could. Right, it's very swingy. Lookout Sir is going to make that a 5. So for me, it's too hard. But then when it's in combat, it has a bite. It has a bite, right? A 2-inch bite, 3 attacks, hits on 3s, wounds on 3s, rend 2 for D3 damage. So it can be a nice little objective holder. It could be a nice support piece, but I don't find it does a lot of damage in shooting unless you have ways to buff it. And Gitz doesn't have a lot of buffing for shooting.
Yep.
And then the Snufflers as well. So another cool way you can use the Snufflers is using the Hand of Gork to teleport them and bring them forward, so to keep you in buff ranges. So, and you did talk a little bit about the Loonboss on Cave Squig, and sometimes it's hard for that to kind of keep up. The Hand of Gork is another way to kind of bring it forward and drop. So something to consider. I did play around with this list. I have played this at a couple of tournaments or some store tournaments. And another thing that I like to do is maybe drop one of those Squig herds down. And I did mention the Fungoid Cave-Shaman can double cast once per game. I did drop some of those Squig herd once to bring in the Scuttle Tide Endless spell, which was a nice little 30 points, and it allowed me to cheekily you know, like again, zone off the board, manipulate the board a little bit, do some damage, and kind of almost deny people coming into my Squig by blocking off parts of the board. So that was an alternative build that I put in to one of my store tournament lists.
Yeah. No, it's a possibility, definitely. The thing is, it's a cast on 7, right, or 8 even.
Yeah. The cast on 7, and you're relying on the bad moon being on. Or finding that arcane terrain.
But it's a great spell. I love it. It's one of my favorite.
I'm used to it being on Scragrot the Loon King, and he obviously gets an addition to cast, but the 7 is inconsistent. So be mindful of staying out of your opponent's unbind ranges. Look for that arcane terrain. Look for any way that you can kind of boost it, making sure that the light of the bad moon is going to be on the side of where your wizard's going to be on. Any way that you can make that consistent, especially late game. So and that might actually mean putting the bad moon on the other side of the board, and then kind of late game the line shines on you.
Yep. No, I agree. Yep. So makes sense.
That's my list. I've got a few iterations to this list, and I've manipulated them. I've dropped those Squig herds from 18 to 12s. I've made it a 5 drop by putting an extra unit of Squig herd. I've boosted up the Boingrots. I think the cool thing is that there's a lot of synergy, and there's a lot of different ways that you can build this list. And no matter how you want to play with your Squigs, these battalions are really rewarding. The rules that come with Jaws of Mork are really, really rewarding, and ultimately creates consistency to what was traditionally a very frustrating and inconsistent army.
Yep. No,
Adam laughs because he knows I'm 100% correct.
Yeah, it still is frustrating, right? There is still a lot of random numbers and dice rolls and stuff, but not as much as before, and that's a good thing.
No, I'm okay with the random in damage. What was frustrating is when I was trying to set up the board and I was losing games because of a bad dice roll on my movement, and just burning command points, just trying to be able to re-roll charges, and I'm just spending so many command points. It was becoming frustrating early on, but this now allows me to be more strategic as opposed to putting my Squigs on the table and having a laugh, which is what it was kind of becoming at one point.
Yep. No, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna try to wrap us up, but like,
right. We can wrap it up. I don't have no.
No, we don't have to.
No. I'm not saying we have to. I'm just saying I think we said the most important stuff about it. If I should make my guess as what the most competitive list would look like, it would be probably more like yours and not like mine. I think that the double stampede, or at least one stampede and no Squigalanche, is probably the way to go, about the most competitive you can get. I think making a most or more balanced list with some grots in and having the Boinger boundaries as the heavy hitters is probably the competitive wave, I would say.
And I think the chat's just called me out. I think I might have actually uploaded my wrong list because I believe the Squigalanche requires one Mangler Squig without a Loonboss. So I would probably change that list a little bit. Ignore me, guys. I might have uploaded my wrong list. This is what happens when you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to talk about lists. I would probably drop.
We even talked about it, right? I asked if there has to be one, and I didn't notice it either. So.
All good. It happens. No, I think I put up the wrong list. I would be, if I was going to change that list and bring it more into legality, I would just drop those Squig herd down a little bit and bring in the Colossal Squig. So bring the Squig herd down a little bit and find those points for the Mangler Squig. Because it's only a 220, 240, so it's not that not that expensive.
Yep.
So, what have you learnt by playing this? And kind of bringing us home. What have you learnt by playing this list that might not be natural to someone who's picking up that White Dwarf, that battle tome for the first time?
It's I think it's there's no hidden wisdom there in the list. It's pretty straightforward. It's hard hitting, glass cannon, no bravery. I think that's the biggest downfall of the whole list, or the Squigs, because apart from the Squig herd, you don't really get anything from your models running away. So I think the bravery, even with the command trait, you can reroll it. It's still the biggest issue of the list right now. I think the biggest strength of the list is as I said already many times, is the movement. It's can be so great, so low, but the randomness is also the strength and the weakness at the same time. But with the consistency with the consistency that the Jaws of Mork gave us, it's more to the strength side than the weakness side. So that's good.
I think for me, it's about knowing when to give away first turn and when to take first turn, and thinking about the threat ranges, thinking about not the potential of Squigs, but rather what is the average. So yes, my Colossal Squig can move 4d6, so it does have a movement potential of 24. But what's the likelihood of getting that 24? What's the likelihood, and what would I do if I rolled under average? So planning for the best, but also having a plan if you go. And I think that's where, as a Squig player, you can't go too far in advance. So you can't think that I'm going to do in turn one, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, because that free 6-inch move could only be one unit. It might not be the three. The move roll or Squig lure might not go off. So have lots of different options and do consider that. Any other final thoughts or considerations that you would have with the Squigs?
Considerations, just go and buy them. Don't wait for nothing. We need more Squigs. There is not enough.
There's not enough. I love it. I love it. I love that. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm just doing the maths now. I'm trying to justify my wrong army list. I can't believe the first army list I talk about, I upload the wrong version of it. I'm such a dickhead. I was just looking at it. I dropped the Squig hoppers down each, so that would bring me 70. Drop the snufflers, that's 100. That brings me to 210. I've got 10 points up my sleeve, so that's another 220. I'm going to find 20 points somewhere. We'll work it out. But I'm sure the chat is very forgiving that I uploaded my wrong list. But this has been awesome, Adam. It's been really insightful to hear talking about Squigs. Had a whole bunch of cool people in the chat talking all things Squigs. go out there, go buy it, go play it. Games Workshop have shown their hand, and they are rewarding us with a whole bunch of cool rules. And it sounds like these are going to be around for the long term. So if you've got a tournament near you, go play with them. And I'd love to hear what your lists look like.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Still learning.
All right, guys. Adam, if people want to find you, I've got your Twitter handle in the episode description. Any shout outs, anyone you want to call out, or if people want to talk to you more, where can they find you?
Probably the Twitter, I would say. That's where I react the most. I have a bunch of other social media I don't really check. So just if you want to speak to me, go via the Twitter. Yeah, definitely. If you are Czech and you are watching this, just get in touch with me. I will send you our Discord for the Czech community. There is not enough of us, so never enough. But yeah, I think that's all from me.
Do you want to give us a goodbye in your native tongue?
Goodbye.
Anything like give a shout out to all your Czech people, not in English.
Not in English. I haven't prepared. I don't know what to say. You put me on the spot.
Don't worry about it. All right, don't worry about it. I'll say, guys, don't forget to name your characters. And Adam, thank you for your time. Twitter handle is below. If you like this episode, go and crush the like and subscribe and all that YouTube-y stuff. But Adam, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for everyone hanging out with us. I'll see you all guys again very soon.
Mate, how good was that video? Surely it's going to go straight to the pool room. If you enjoyed that video, I would appreciate it if you crush that like button, and if you have an opinion, leave it in the comment section. That lets YouTube know it's a great video and it should share it with other Age of Sigmar players. Cheers to all the bloody legends here on the screen who have financially supported AoS Coach on Patreon on YouTube members. Their contributions have helped me improve the quality, frequency, and the variety of content on this channel. So cheers guys, you are bloody legends. Until the next video, don't forget to shoot the heroes and have a good one.